Today we're going to make an Oreo cheesecake that is 6 inches. You can make it without a springform pan and it's really easy to do. Yes, I know we made a lot of cheesecake lately, but this one is fabulous and is a recommendation by Miss Emma. There's not a lot of ingredients, but the star of the show are Oreo cookies. The first thing you want to do is set your oven rack to the lowest position available. Then you want to preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 degrees Celsius. Next, you want a cutting board and a really sharp knife. Now for this recipe, you're going to need 15 whole Oreos. That's about 127 grams for those that are curious. The first thing we're going to do is take 3 of the cookies and we're going to attempt to break them in half. This is for decoration. And I recommend doing this step first because some of them will break on you. Use a very sharp knife and press down. If there are any crumbs like you see here, you want to scoot them aside because if you don't, when you go to press it down, it's going to crack your cookie into shreds. I like to use a really sharp knife and just press straight down. Now take these halves and put them in an airtight container and set them aside. Now we're going to need 3 Oreo cookies that are broken. Remember how I said sometimes when you break these into halves, you'll get broken parts? That's okay because we are going to use this. You can use a knife like I'm doing here, or you can use your hands. Next, you want to take 9 Oreo cookies and you want to finely crush these. Now a blender makes quick work of this, but if you don't have a blender, don't worry, just put it in a plastic bag and bash it until it's very finely chopped up. You want to reserve 1 to 2 tablespoons of crumbs, that's around 9.5 to 19 grams of cookie crumbs, and set this aside for decoration as well. I'm not going to use a springform pan because I find they are finicky and prone to leaking. Instead, I'm going to use an ordinary 6-inch cake pan that is 15 centimeters. Now we need to prep the pan with parchment paper so that the cheesecake can be released. You want to cut out a 6-inch circle that's 15 centimeters. Put it inside the pan and make sure it fits, and if you need to trim off a little bit, go ahead and do so. And because this cheesecake will rise as it bakes, we want to put a collar around it. So we're going to make 1 rectangular strip that is 3.5 inches by 19 inches or 9 by 48 centimeters. To help you lift the cheesecake out, you're going to use 2 rectangular strips, 1 inch by 12 inches. That's 2.5 by 30 centimeters. And you can use 2 or 3. I'm actually going to go ahead and use 3 for this recipe because I wasn't sure if the Oreos would impact anything, but 2 is fine. And then you're going to need to take 1 tablespoon of butter, that's 14 grams, and melt it. To get the parchment paper to stick to the pan, you need to adhere it. And to do so, we're going to use melted butter. And we're not going to need the whole amount because we're going to use the rest of it for the actual crust. So I'm going to melt 1 tablespoon of butter, that's about 14 grams. And then I'm just going to paint it on to the bottom of the pan and also onto the strips of parchment paper as I lay them out. Now you want to lay this out in a particular order. You want to lay out the really long skinny strips in a cross formation and then you put on the circle. You want to do this so when you go to lift the cheesecake out, it has that circle to also protect the cheesecake from just cracking. This will take a little bit of time and finessing, but it is worth it because this is what ensures your cheesecake comes out in one piece. We're going to use the crushed up Oreos. It's about 1/2 cup if you're wondering, and we're going to put them in a small bowl, and then any of the remaining butter, we're going to go ahead and put that in as well. Now the butter is more for flavor than it is for adhering things together. The Oreo cream center will melt down as it bakes, and if you put too much butter in it, it will become quite greasy and not pleasant at all. But this little extra butter that we have left over from preparing our pan will give it a nice buttery taste to it. Stir this together until it's moistened, and then we're going to put it into the bottom of the pan and press down firmly. Once it's firmly packed in, you want to heat it in the oven for 5 to 10 minutes until you just start to smell the cookies. Once you finish baking the crust, put it on a wire rack and set it aside. In a large bowl, we need 2 8-ounce packages of softened cream cheese. That's 454 grams. Now you can use fat-free to full fat, but I do not recommend the kind that's in the tub that is spreadable. It doesn't taste the same and it doesn't always set right. You want to beat this on a medium-low speed, stopping to scrape down the sides until it is very smooth. Make sure to check for any lumps and beat those out. Once you have that done, you're going to add in some sour cream or yogurt. You want to use 1/4 cup plain yogurt or sour cream, that's 60 grams. I like to use yogurt, but sour cream will really take it up a notch. Either one is fine, and you can use fat-free to full fat. The more fat in the recipe, the more flavor it's going to have, but the more calories it will have. Just keep that in mind. Once again, you want to beat this on a medium-low speed until it's well combined and you don't see any lumps scraping down the sides as needed. Once you have that well combined, you're going to add in your sugar and then some salt. You're going to use 2/3 cup of sugar or 133 grams. And then you're just going to use a pinch of salt, about 1/8 of a teaspoon, 0.625 grams. Mix this up until it's well combined and give it a little bit of a taste. If you don't think it's sweet enough, you can add just a little more sugar, up to 1/4 cup or about 50 grams. If you add more sugar than that, it's going to be way too sweet with those Oreo cookies. Once you have your sugar and salt incorporated, we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla, that's 5 milliliters. Now you can use fake vanilla if you want to, it's completely fine for this recipe, or if you don't have it, you can even leave it out. It's not critical, it just gives a little depth of flavor there in the end. Now we're going to add in 2 large eggs, that's 100 grams. We're going to put them in a separate bowl first and whisk them up briefly with a fork. We want to do this because we don't want to add a lot of air to our cheesecake. When you add a lot of air to cheesecake, it rises up too quickly, and then as it settles, you'll either get a sunken middle or you'll get excessive cracking in the end. So do this, and then you're going to mix the eggs in on a very low speed until they're just combined. It's going to be a very thin batter, and at this point you want to take a spatula and you want to scrape through it and knock out any air that you see and make sure everything is well combined. It should be, but if not, this is your chance to make sure everything is well incorporated. Once you are happy with the way the batter looks, you're going to add in those broken up Oreos from earlier, and you're just going to fold these in gently. Now we're going to just pour this out into our crumb base, scraping all of it out that you can because you don't want to leave any of it behind. Now make sure to put back on your oven mitts in case your pan is still warm. Give your pan a little bit of a tap to bust out any air bubbles, and then you can use the tines of a fork to bust any that has run to the surface. Now if your countertop is heat proof, you can tap it out onto the counter, but if it isn't, just use the wire rack and do so gently. Now we need to create a water bath. And a water bath is really simple. I'm going to take my 6-inch cake pan and put it in a 9-inch cake pan that's 23 centimeters. And now we're going to create a water bath by adding some hot tap water halfway up the side of that 6-inch or 15 centimeter cake pan. Be careful not to touch the cake pan in case it's still warm. And then you're going to pop this in the oven carefully and you're going to bake it 60 to 75 minutes. This cheesecake will be done when the temperature reaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius for those that are using a thermometer. Once you have baked this 60 to 75 minutes and the center just barely wobbles, you're going to turn off your oven and then set the door ajar. You just want it cracked just slightly and allow this to cool inside the oven for 45 to 60 minutes. This will help prevent sunken and cracked cheesecakes. Once it has sit in the oven for 45 to 60 minutes, you're going to bring it out onto a wire rack and you're going to carefully remove it from that water bath. Use gloves here because it could still be quite warm. And then you are going to let this sit at room temperature until it's cool. That's about another 45 to 60 minutes. Now comes the hard part. You have to refrigerate this a minimum of 4 hours. Overnight, 8 hours is best, but if you can't wait that long, 4 hours is the minimum to get the proper texture. Once this has set for 4 hours minimum, overnight is best again, we're going to remove it from the pan. And you're going to take your time here. You're going to use the little tabs that you created and you're just going to lift them up slightly until you feel a suction release. And you want to just go around the circumference of the pan, pulling on each of the little tabs until it starts to lift easily for you. If you have someone in your house that can help you hold down the pan, it will make it a lot easier for you, but you can do this by yourself. Carefully lift it out of the pan and onto a cutting board or whatever surface you're going to be serving it on. You then want to remove all the parchment paper, or at least around the sides, and remove those tabs. Now, if you take a thin spatula and carefully lift up that bottom, you can often slide out that circle piece of parchment paper. You don't have to cover this up, but we want people to know that this is an Oreo cheesecake. So we've decided to dress it up a little bit. We're going to take about 2 tablespoons of chocolate syrup or sauce, about 30 milliliters or so, and pour it on the center of the cake. And then we are going to spread it out and let it drip just a little bit on the sides if we want for decoration. The whole purpose of using the chocolate syrup is so that those cookie crumbs that we reserved earlier will stick to the top. Also, it will give a really nice chocolatey taste that you weren't expecting. Once you have the chocolate sauce or syrup spread out, you're going to take your crumbs and you're going to sprinkle them on the top as evenly as possible. Now you may be noticing there's a little something going on with my camera, and I'm really sorry, you guys. I actually dropped my camera and broke it, and I was able to fix it enough to finish filming this, but unfortunately my camera is now gone. I have had the worst summer when it comes to breaking things. I don't know what's going on with me, guys. Anyway, let's move on. Doesn't this look pretty already? But just so you really know this is an Oreo cheesecake, let's take those halved Oreos and place them on top and make it look really pretty. Now, when it comes to the type of Oreos you can use whichever one you like. I know they have some dark chocolate ones and some golden ones, and I bet those would make some fabulous cheesecakes. But we went with the classic original Oreo. Now, whichever one you use, try to avoid using the double stuff because it can actually mess up the recipe. It can make it a little bit greasy, and you don't want that to happen. Now let's cut into this cheesecake and see what it looks like. Yes, this is a different cheesecake. Remember, I told you I broke my camera. Well, I didn't realize it until after I sliced into it, so I had to make a whole nother one. I was not disappointed about that fact. Use a relatively sharp knife, and as you cut each slice, wipe it off with a damp rag or paper towel and make sure you point the blade away from you. I almost pointed it toward me, and that would have been a disaster. Press straight down, and that will help you get the cleanest cut possible. I'm telling you, if you are an Oreo and cheesecake lover, you will not be disappointed when you bite into it. I promise no more cheesecake recipes for a while. We're going to do something pretty fun. I'm going to show you how to make pumpkin spice next time we're around, and then we're going to use that pumpkin spice and make some fun desserts with it. And if I have forgotten about videos for you, just remind me, I do have some fun macaron videos to come up. But it has just been a whirlwind of a summer. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for all the well wishes and being patient with me. I've missed you guys so much. Thank you for watching. And as always, happy baking.